my destiny.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Black Book Podcast. Man, today is our final episode of the season. That's right, it is the season finale of the Black Book Podcast, season 1. And before we get started with our interview for today, it's going to be a great interview. But before we get started with our interview, I just want to give a little bit of shout out to everybody. First, I want to say thanks for all the support you guys have been giving me since I started this thing back in June. I've gotten a lot of support from all over the world, for listeners from all over the world, from family and friends back in Chicago and the rest of the United States, and from just people I've met being in China. But those people have reached to the far corners of the globe, and they're just everywhere. And I have, just listeners from all types of places. I just want to thank all of my interviewees, and I really just got to name them off one by one because this thing has been so great so far, and I'm sad that I'm ending it so early, but we got some changes coming. But I want to shout these people out first, right? So shout out to Olivia Nadine, my very first interviewee on the podcast. Man, she gave a great show for the first one. I appreciate that. Shout out to Nair. Nair was a good interviewee as well. Shout out to Tim. Tim had a very interesting podcast. Shout out to Keela. Man, Keela had a really fire and powerful podcast. Man, Marcus Davis, I learned so much from this guy when I was doing his podcast. Shout out to Dr. Lisa Gordon, just a diva, just doing her work. Man, next we got Chanel Tramiel. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about everything that you've been through and everything that you got going on. And next is my good friend Mika. I've known this guy for basically since the whole time I've been in China, and he's like a superstar, man. Like learning Chinese, he's very good at it, dude. And I appreciate you coming in and sharing your story. Next is S.J. Ali. Thanks for coming and share your story and sharing your book with us. And I can't give a shout out to the next one yet because we're going to introduce her first, but I want to appreciate those first 9 for coming on the show, taking the plunge with me so that I can have a great show. They can share their stories and everything like that. I appreciate that. Again, everybody, thanks for all the support, all the listeners and everything like that. Also, I want to say thanks to Zach Bourne. Thanks to Zach Bourne, man. When I first started the podcast, I did everything from scratch myself, even the artwork. I'm not a very artsy guy, so when my first set of artwork, it was not very good. It was trash, to be honest. And Zach, I went to school with Zach at Wabash College, and we were both a part of the MXI, the Malcolm X Institute of Black Studies. And Zach knew I was doing a podcast, but he found out after I had, released a couple of episodes or something like that. But Zach, out of the kindness of his heart, didn't tell me anything. I just woke up one day with a Facebook message, and this dude has sent me 3 different versions of the current artwork for the podcast just out of nowhere. And, like that's the type of support we've been getting. Like this dude just came out of nowhere and helped me. Another shout out I want to give to is my good friend, one of my first college roommates, Cam Stewart, man, aka Freddie Franchise. Cam Stewart, dude, I appreciate the work that you did with me at the beginning, helping me find things for the audio, man. I really appreciate that. It's going a long way, and we're gonna continue to work together in the future when we come back for season 2. My last little shout out. A last shout out I gotta give to my one of my big brothers, King Bone. When I first started the podcast, when I first had the idea to start the podcast, his song "Best I Can Be" was the number 1 song I wanted. That was the only song I wanted, and I think that he let me use his song, and I really hope y'all can find him on the internet. His rap name is King Bone. You can find him on his IG handle, King Bone 2 Dope, all one word. Man, he's going places, man. Like, please to support all of these people who have been on the show, who's helped me out with the show and things like that. All right, before we start, let's talk about this, man. I got some changes coming to the Black Book Podcast when season 2 comes out. We're still going to be doing interviews. We're still going to be doing interviews weekly. However, we are gonna have more content, right? So nowadays for season one, I was just releasing one episode a week or maybe one episode every 2 weeks, things like that. Season two, I'm going to be more consistent with dropping episodes. Also, we're going to have more episodes in 1 week. So maybe 2 or 3 episodes in a week, definitely more than one. And I don't want to say what they are because I want to keep you guys on your toes just a little bit more. Um, Next thing is our interviews. Just every episode is going to have a little bit more structure. I've gotten some feedback. I've looked at the podcast analytics, and I see you guys. Maybe you guys are telling me that hey, it's a little bit too long. So we're trying to find that sweet spot for you guys to give us some structure so that we won't have a podcast that's too long for you guys. So whenever you guys are listening, whether it's in the morning, on the way to work, on the train, on the bus, walking down the street, whatever it is, in your Uber rides or your DD rides, anything like that, we're gonna make it just long enough so that you guys can listen and enjoy the whole episode. All right. Um, Last thing is that we are going to be expanding to more platforms. Right now, I'm on about 10 different platforms, maybe. I think 10. We're going to get to more of those, right? We're going to get to more of those, but I want to let you guys know what platforms we are on right now, right? So currently we are on Anchor, who is also my distributor. After Anchor, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Breaker, we're on Castbox, we're on Overcast, we're on Pocket Cast, and we're on Radio Public. All right. We're also on YouTube and also on Billy. All right. We are going to be getting on more podcasts soon, more platforms soon. So don't you guys worry about that. Uh, ooh, Another thing is that we will be having some apparel. So be on the lookout for some Black Book Podcast apparel. All right, that apparel might be dropping maybe before season two or right after the first episode of season two drops. Is coming. Don't worry about it, and it's gonna look fire. Don't worry about that. And just overall, man, the podcast is gonna be much better when we come back for season two, and we're not gonna come back it's not gonna be that long. Trust me, it's not gonna be that long when we come back. Um, I just want to thank everybody again. I want to shout out all the countries that have been listening to my show. So obviously, my biggest base is in the United States, and man, I think about maybe 30 different states all over America have been listening from the United States. Also want to shout out people in the UK, my UK listeners. Thank you for that. My Hong Kong listeners, my Canadian listeners, my listeners from Spain and Ireland. I got listeners from Finland, France, South Korea, Japan, the Netherlands, Ghana, and lastly, China. All right. Thank all you guys who have been listening from all over the world. Thank you guys for reaching out, listening to my podcast, supporting me every week. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys stay along for the ride because we're only going to get better from here. All right. Now, let's take a break really quickly. And when I come back, we're going to start our interview for the season final. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're sitting here with Lise Alleyne. And actually, I met Lise Alleyne a long time ago. I don't know if you remember this, Lisa. Our very first time hanging out. It was quite long ago. I didn't actually remember it until I sat down with at this like informational you did back in 2019, but we had met like in 2017. I had no idea.
What?
Yeah, it was funny, right? Me, you, and a group of other people, like basically all the guys knew each other, all the girls knew each other, and we were hanging out somewhere. Like we went to Heavens, and it was like what Scuba Steve and the girl who does
Okay.
what's good Beijing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but that was like a while back. I didn't realize that until like
Wow.
2019. Yeah. So I was like, oh
Damn.
yeah, I actually met her before. We hung out, like but like you don't really get to realize, you don't realize that, because the foreigner circle is so small, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's just get right into it. Lisa, can you just really quickly just tell us like where are you from and like the current things you're doing right now?
So I'm from Toronto, Canada. And in terms of the current things that I'm doing right now, I came home because my brother was getting married, my cousin was getting married, and my good friend was getting married, and I got locked out of Canada or locked out of China. So I'm due to coronavirus. So I
Right.
got locked out, and while I was locked out, it looks like things aren't kind of improving for me to go back right now. The borders aren't like exclusively open.
Yeah.
So I enrolled to do a master's in marketing. So right now I'm doing a master's in marketing, but I'm still running also Thrive Beijing between Canada and China, which is an online magazine and community for young, ambitious professionals in China or
Yeah.
Beijing.
Yes. Everyone, at least everybody in Beijing knows Thrive Beijing. I've read a couple articles here and there. I actually follow it. So, but yeah, can you tell us why did you move to China in the first place?
So I moved to China in 2015.
Okay.
And the reason that I moved was for a job. So I was working at a university in Canada and it was a contract job. And at the same time that my contract was ending, somebody contacted me over LinkedIn about a job in China. And honestly, the job felt too good to be true.
Uh-huh.
When I was younger, I always wanted to teach English in China. Um, but as I got older, I had taught English in Spain and realized that I didn't want to teach for the rest of my life. But
Right.
I still wanted to go to Asia. And I thought if I could get a job in education that had that like wasn't teaching, that would be the perfect situation for me. And I kid you not, the perfect situation landed on my desk. Somebody contacted me about being an activities coordinator for an international school in China. And it was huge for me because I worked in international education in Canada before. And I would always see these things like about exchange programs that I felt my superiors were missing. I felt like there's a disconnect between what the adults are saying the kids should do and what the kids are saying we want to do or the experience we need for our future. And
Right.
so I never had the opportunity to like create an exchange myself. But then part of this job in China was that I would be creating international field trips and international exchange programs
Okay.
for the kids, along with organizing local field trips for them and speakers to come into the school and stuff like that. So I absolutely love the job, and that's what brought me to China originally.
Okay, cool. And okay, so you were before that, maybe not right before that, you were in Spain teaching as well. So China wasn't your first time living abroad.
No, no,
Okay.
I've been to El Salvador like for extended time before, and also Spain.
Okay. So I know that you kind of like do two different things. I think well, it's kind of like one thing, but I think it's like a extension of what Thrive Beijing is, because Thrive Beijing is a internet magazine that you have been running since how long?
Since 2017, since we
Since
met.
2007. Oh wow, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. What made you start Thrive?
When people ask this question, there's like so many parts to it. As you know, Beijing changes so quickly all the time.
Yeah.
And when I first came to Beijing in 2015, I was so lucky to like find a group to hang out with right away because actually the first week that I came, I was like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't know anybody. It's hard to meet people because, at that time I was I couldn't go anywhere without my Google Maps, and Google Maps didn't work in China. Didi wasn't
Right.
in English. And so I felt like very constricted and confined to where I could go. And because of that, I wasn't meeting people.
Right.
And so I ended up reaching out to my parents' embassy. My parents are from Guyana, and I sent an email to their embassy saying, like, how can I get involved? Because it's something that I used to be involved in when I was younger, like volunteering within the Guyanese community. So I figured, okay, if I can do that, then maybe I'll meet some people and get involved that way.
Right.
And a young girl that worked at the embassy at that time said, we don't have opportunities to volunteer, but let me add you to like the Caribbean WeChat group. And through that group, I met friends, and through those friends, I met other friends. But the one thing that happened in 2015 that kind of started getting me thinking about this is two things. One, I started going out to these events that were circulating in the WeChat groups that I had found, and they weren't making it to the Beijinger. These events weren't making it to the Beijinger, but they were such great events. And I felt like, wow, I'm so surprised other people aren't seeing these events and going to them, because I'm having a great time and I'm meeting a lot of people and finding out about a lot of resources. And at the same time that I was having this like amazing time, a lot of people at my work specifically like hated living in China. They were like, it's the worst here. I'm only here because I'm making a ton of money. And I just thought that like that's such a horrible way to live. Like, oh, I'm here, but life is passing me by. And so I'm miserable and just like, drinking and, spending my whole day sleeping, spending my whole night drinking. And I just thought, I started to see how many opportunities existed in China going to these things. And I thought, why aren't they loving it and why am I loving it? And the difference between our experiences came down to the fact that I was going out, meeting people, getting access to resources, getting opportunities because of the friendships I was making. And so that started to put some gears grinding in my head and made me think like, how can I help other people find these events, like see these opportunities that are out here, meet other people. And that ended up snowballing into Thrive Beijing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. You have to like, I guess you kind of have to put yourself out there. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily do that. I think China is pretty hard to do that because like, I think culturally, like, nationals here don't necessarily put themselves out there like that to like go out and find and experience new things even within their own country. And I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's just, like how people are raised and, how they're brought up through a certain culture and system and stuff like that. So like that rubs off on you when you come here because you see how close knit everyone is. But yeah, I definitely believe that. And I know I can experience that as well because I was going to events that weren't on the Beijinger. And for anyone who's listening who don't know what the Beijinger is, basically it's like this huge media platform that like you can just basically post anything on. It has like classifieds on it for jobs or hey, I'm looking for a pet or anything like that. Anything you can think of that's like Beijing Center, you can probably find on the Beijinger. But sometimes they have like they do miss some events like the one you were talking about that helped you get to where you needed to go so that you can find out what you wanted to do. So yeah, I've definitely had that experience. One other thing I noticed that you do through Thrive Beijing, and I've been noticing this since I've been in China, maybe not since I've been in China, maybe since I've been in certain groups, that you post this thing called Monday Mix every Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you like what like why do you do that and like what exactly is the Monday Mix?
Okay, so I don't know. I had this assumption that you always have the assumption that everybody experiences life, their daily life the way you do. And basically the Monday to me was like in Canada, when you go to work in the morning, like when you're driving to work, like the first thing you do or like when you wake up to get ready is you turn on the radio and you've got radio stations that are, they have this morning tidbits of morning news. So when I came to China, I didn't have access to a lot of stuff like music and things like that because I don't read Chinese or Mandarin, or I don't read Chinese, sorry. And so I was having a hard time getting like their apps, their music apps, and finding the music I liked. And that, you know, it's if you find one song, I just want one solid mix. And at the time, like, you know, VPNs weren't so solid all the time either. And so I decided, like, what if we could create a mix and put it out there every morning so that people had the opportunity to have like a good mix to get ready to and to kind of pick up their day, because music always made me feel better in the mornings and feel more ready to like tackle the week. So that's how the Monday mix came about, is just like to give something to our community that isn't readily available in China, just as something to help you start the week right.
Right. Hey, let me ask you a question real quick. Does your
Yep.
computer say it's recording?
Yes, it does.
Okay, all right. Oh, all right. Yeah, but for sure. So like I really didn't know who was doing it at first because I wasn't paying attention to who was posting it, but like I'm glad you do it because over the years you've put me on to a couple of songs that I had no idea about. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty good. So yeah, I think that is a really good thing that you do because like you said, foreigners don't really have a good choice of like how to find music unless you can read Chinese or you're willing to struggle through the apps that they have that actually have our music choice on them, but it's not clear about what it is because it's not in English. Yeah, so so that's really cool that you do that. Lastly, I I uh I've never attended these. I've always wanted to go, but they always come up when I'm not around or like I gotta work this day or something like that. And which are the Beijing monologues. So can you talk about the
Yeah.
Beijing monologues?
It's so funny how the Beijing monologues came about, because this is uh, the star child of Boida, actually. So Boida, one thing I love about Boida is one of the co-founders of Thrive Beijing. Like Nicola,
Okay.
Alexis, and Boida are um, two of the co-founders. And one thing I love about Boida is every like in the on the weekends. I've lived with her before, and on the weekends, every morning she wakes up to either some like amazing podcast or some like soul jazz and like good music. Um, and one of the podcasts that she listens to is called The Moth. And The Moth is a podcast that's about live storytelling. So before we heard, Nikki and I heard the Moth, Boyda said, there's this podcast, you guys have to listen to it. It's about like live story, like, so people just get on stage and they tell stories, and it's so good, and we should do this in Beijing. And Nikki and I never listened to the podcast, and Boyda was like, come on, when are we going to do this thing? And we're just like, so people just go on stage and tell stories? And she's like, yeah, but it's like so good, the stories are like this. So we didn't understand what Boyda's idea was for the longest time,
Okay.
until like a year later we listened to the podcast and we were like, oh my god, imagine if so and so told this story. Do you remember when they told us the story? Imagine if they told that live. Oh my god, what if this person told this story? So we started realizing that we have so many good stories from living in Beijing, whether they're funny
Right.
stories or like touching stories or, you know, sad stories. But we feel that, like, you know, Beijing throws so much at you. And it's amazing how, as like foreigners who don't speak a lot of Mandarin, you're able to, you know, grow from those experiences and just like live through them, you know. And even we try to also have young Chinese people also share stories too, so that we get that mix of, you know, this is what they're going through, this is what we're going through. And, you know, at the end of the day, we really are kind of going through the same thing. We're just young people trying to achieve goals or trying to do something.
Right.
Um, so that's how we started Beijing Monologues, was to be a community event where we could gather over the stories that make up our time here.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's pretty dope. I mean, I knew that's what it was. I just hate that I have not been to one. And when I reached out to you about being on the show, I was like, wait, is is this a recording? Because like I gotta listen to these because I hear they're so great, they're so good. Just to
Thank you.
hear. Yeah, I mean, because I like that goal, because that's the goal of this podcast, just to get people's stories out there and stuff like that, get them recorded so people can listen to them. Because you know, I'm a firm believer that, like, no matter where you're from, who you are, the things you've been through, or the things that like you can't get into, there's a place you can go that will allow you to do
Yeah.
it and things like that. And so like for me, like I'm highlighting people who have experience abroad. I mean, like I will be, interviewing people who've only been in their home doing great things as well. But the focus is to let people know that, hey, you don't have to stay there. You can go somewhere else and do the exact same thing and maybe make even more money, or just live a way better life. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I wanted to. That's kind of the premise of this podcast is. Uh, Moving on, I want to ask you about your inspiration. Just like, what if you can boil what things that inspiration down to you to like a few things? What would it be?
That inspire me about what? Like just in life in
Just
general,
and like just like to create things, to help others, to create things like the Thrive Beijing, Monday Mix, Beijing Monologue. Like, what's your inspiration behind that?
I feel like there really is no one thing. I think
Right.
that I've grown up in a family that really values helping others.
Mhm.
So that's always been a part of my life, is to volunteer for like in my parents' community in Canada, to help our neighbors and things like that. Um, but there's so many different stages of it, because I think sometimes people see me and think, oh, she has extraordinary skills and she was able to do that, and that's why she can do it, but I can't do it. But to be honest, the truth is, like, I have my moments of self-doubt too. Like when I
Right.
first started Thrive, I was nervous as hell to post the first article, because I was like, what if everybody starts going off in these WeChat groups saying like, this is shit, like,
Right.
like, stop posting this. Like, I would be crushed. And to be honest, on top of that, like, I didn't have tech skills before, and I was dyslexic when I was younger, so that played a lot into my self-doubt and me thinking like, I can't do this. Like, I remember how I got the website built was one of my former colleagues. She was younger than me, and she was
Mm.
starting an NGO called Artists Abroad, about putting arts education in Asia, in certain countries that didn't
Right.
have arts in public school. She was creating curriculum, and she wanted to hire me to go around Asia during my summer and make all these deals with her, for like with education boards, to implement her curriculum. And she said, I can't pay you, but I know that you have this idea, and the trade-off that I'll give you is I'll teach you how to build a website if you help me make these deals.
Right.
And so I was nervous as hell, because I was saying to her, like, her name is Liz, like, I don't know, I don't have any tech skills, like, I don't know how to code anything, I've never taken a class in this before, I can't do it. Like, I really was in the mind that, like, if you don't have a degree in it, you can't do it. And she was like, absolutely not. I taught myself, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. And it just launched me into a completely different frame of mind, because sure enough, this girl gave me the tools that I needed to build my own website. And now, if anybody says, like, I can't build a website, I'm going to be that person who says, yes, you can. It's
Right.
so easy. Like, understand, once you know how to read the tabs, then boom, you're good. You know how to do this. Um, and so, in terms of inspiration, it was definitely different things in my life. It was the values that I grew up with, and just kind of the environment I grew up with, that valued helping other people, and doing something about the things that you saw lacking in your community. And then it was different people along the way, like, reminding me that I could do things. So stepping out of my self-doubt was a huge factor. And then on top of that, it was people showing me that they were doing it and that I could do it as well. That was that other factor. And also having like Nikki and Boy to back me up, you know, a lot of people have ideas and it's hard to launch them on your own simply because of fear, but it's a lot easier when you have people behind you going, oh my God, I love that idea. Do that. I'll help you. Tell me how I can help. That is something that I got a lot of from our community, which pushed me to like go further. And I think that the community has been like a huge source of my inspiration, like people reading our articles and saying, after I found out about this, then I was able to go and do that thing that I wanted to do. So that is huge inspiration for me.
Okay, all right. Yeah. That sounds like really good inspiration. I actually want to ask you now, what's your favorite book?
Ooh, my favorite book. Okay, let me
Yeah.
look over at my shelf.
Or if you can't pick one, you can name a couple.
Okay, so I have different books for different things.
Okay.
For actual like reading and visualizing, there's a book that I read when I was a kid called The White Oleander. And I don't know why. This was like probably the first real book I read as a kid, and it always stuck in my head. And so I recently borrowed it from the library again to read it because I'm thinking like if that stuck in my head as a kid, why was the image so vivid? And so I reread it, and just this girl, the writer is Janet something. I forget what her last name is, and the way that she writes just makes you feel like you're right in there and you can visualize. So as a writer, I'm trying to see like how did she take this idea and put it in so few words but create such an image in my mind and get me so invested in this character's life.
Okay.
So in terms of like literary work, I really like The White Oleander. In terms of business, there's a book that I feel like changed my life. A lot of people know about it. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And it's, you might call it a philosophy / business book. And it's just a guy says basically that he has a secret to business and life, and he's not going to state it in the book, but he's going to tell it in the book. And so he'll never come out and say, this is the difference between somebody who succeeds and fails in business, but you're reading it and you need to find what the answer is.
Okay.
And he basically tells stories from like the beginning of Coca-Cola, like right up to he tells stories of the biggest businesses throughout history and how they started as this one idea and what was the thing that turned them into success. And the takeaway that I got from that book is just having ideas and taking action on them and not being afraid. He talks about Coca-Cola, how Coca-Cola was basically a doctor sold a merchant a recipe on a sheet of paper that was just a square piece of paper, and it had like 3 or 4 ingredients in it. And the idea is that this doctor had this idea, but he didn't see it on a bigger scale. And this merchant had this idea of this other thing, but he needed this doctor's work in order to make it happen. And together, these two ideas exchanged, and this guy, believed in his idea so much that he put money behind it, and he turned it into what Coca-Cola is today. And it's a whole book of like, the mental challenges that you go through as an entrepreneur and how to get over them. And a lot of the challenges are just self-doubt and fear. And so that I love that book. Yeah, I feel like I'll go with those 2 books for now.
Okay. Do you have a favorite quote?
I do, but it's a new one. It's when I don't know what that even means. A new one. I mean, but basically, a few years ago, I was listening to this podcast, and I don't actually know who said this quote, I should really go and find it. But the quote was that successful people are habitual action takers. And it's just the idea that success comes when you just take actions, just take the next step, just take the next step, just take the next step. Even when you're scared, even when you don't know what to do. Like if you don't know what to do, then the next step is thinking what to do. When you think about what to do, it's doing that thing that you've thought of doing. And I really have seen throughout my experience, specifically my experience in China, that when you start something, the ball just gets rolling. Like the ball gets rolling, and when you keep putting one foot in front of the other, more and more opportunities start coming your way. So successful people are habitual action takers.
Yes. Before we get out of here, because I know you got to go. I want to ask you, besides being able to start your online article or an online magazine, sorry, and just find a job that was perfect for you, how else has just being abroad inspired you to do more?
Yeah, I was talking with somebody about this yesterday because now that I'm studying, there's all these kids who are starting to learn about my experience in China, and I'm telling them you have to go abroad, you have to experience China. And I think in general, living abroad, I love travel. So I've lived abroad in a few different countries, or like traveled extensively in a few different countries. And the main thing that it's done for me is open up my mind. I've seen so many different ways people do things, from the ways people serve juice, like we drink juice in a glass, other people drink juice in a bag. And then some people turn that bag and freeze it, and that's their popsicle. And then, like I've seen people make yogurt from scratch in India, and it's made me realize, it's opened my eyes. I think in North America, we're so accustomed to buying things in stores, we forget that at one point we used to make these things. Our families used to make these things from scratch, especially having parents from the Caribbean. Like my dad is like old school Guyanese parent. And so anytime my brother and I buy something, he's like, what you wasting your money for? You could have made that. And he'll like say, like, talk about how back in his day, they made those things. They didn't buy those things. And so I think traveling and living abroad has opened up my mind to the fact that, yeah, like you can make all of this. And also it's the idea exchange between people from all over the world, having a conversation about something that, happened in your life as you grew up, and then talking to other people who go through similar things, but in a different way in their life. Like I love having exchanges with Nikki and Boyda. Nikki is from Jamaica and Boyda is from South Africa. And here we are, three women in their 30s, all with really different backgrounds that have made us so unique. And then this like good friendship comes from all of those experiences and journeys lining up together in China. And I think the most interesting thing about the people that come to China, in my opinion, is that it's so diverse. Like you have to remember that China is giving a chance to so many people that other countries are turning away. And so, the American dream is now the Chinese dream, because people can move out of their countries and come to China and interact with other people and start their own businesses and go to school and do X, Y, and Z. And all the countries that, have refused other countries, China is saying, come here. And it actually really hit me when I went 2 summers ago to Bulgaria, and I met a girl from Syria there. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing. Like, why are you traveling here? I don't know why I'm traveling here, but like, what are you doing here? And she said to me, do you know, as a Syrian, there's about 10 countries that I'm allowed to travel to. And I'm a 30-year-old who got out. I work in the UAE. I make money, but I love travel. But because of my passport, I can't go anywhere. And I just thought, wow, how many people am I not experiencing or like sharing their culture or learning about their lives because they're simply not able to secure a visa or allowed to travel to a certain country. And I feel like China opens those borders. And I never realized that before meeting this Syrian girl, that a lot of these people I simply wouldn't meet on my other travels because they wouldn't be able to go to the places that I can go to.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as accessible.
Very, very true. All right, I lied. I have one more question. I just want to ask you, as a Black person who has so much experience and has been everywhere, well, not everywhere, has been to most places, probably. I'm assuming.
A lot of places.
Like, how has your look on the world changed since you started traveling till now?
I think actually the other question is like, how has my look at the world enabled me to
Okay.
like go to these places? And I think like one thing that I have to say in terms of like culture and being Black, one thing that my parents like really instilled in my brother and I as growing up is that it doesn't matter that we're different. Any opportunity that's available for a white child is what you will and can do. Like you know, your race is not a factor in anything, like in any opportunity for you. You know, they obviously it is, right? There's some barriers, but my parents freed our minds first and said, no, 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 if you want that opportunity, like you're going to have it. And so I found a lot of times um, some of my friends when I was growing up or even in China too will say, I'm not going to do that. That's like white people stuff. And I just keep thinking, but like, do you want to do that though? Because if you want to do that, we can go and do it, you know,
Just
like
go
sometimes.
fucking do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, my brother and I played ice hockey, the only two Black kids out there. But, you know, why shouldn't we? And that built our network, that built like a lot of skills in us. So why should we say that that's only for white people? Like, yeah, we look super weird out there. I'm not gonna lie, like it throws people off all the time. But at the same time, the kids in the change room didn't really notice it that much. Especially when you start those things, like when you're young, it doesn't really matter. And I think, you know, my grandparents lived in Florida. They immigrated to Florida, and I remember going to the YMCA there that my grandfather used to go to, and the woman there asked me if I could speak to some of the young people there about like travel and going abroad. She said like, we have some really like, you know, amazing smart kids here, like I want you to encourage them to go abroad. And the crazy thing is that they didn't know that they could go abroad, you know, like all of them are saying, well, like, I don't have the money to go abroad. And I'm like, do you know that the US and Canada have programs between France and Spain where the governments pay for you to go abroad? If you're under 30, I think it is, you can literally spend a year exchange as a language assistant. There's no reason why that can't be you. But a lot of these opportunities you don't hear about in certain circles. And so if you don't open yourself up to those circles, you're missing the opportunity surely by not knowing about it. But that opportunity is there for you too. And so I think that even like coming to China, a lot of my friends, I have one friend who's from the US, and she told me like, you know, in the US, I was working all these like dead ass jobs and not making any money. And then I came to China and like all of a sudden my skills were valued and I was making money and I was able to like turn my life around.
Yep.
And I just think that's the power of traveling. And that's why you need to get out. And that's why you can't let people tell you that you can't afford it because you have to work these shitty jobs because of your color or anything. Like you can't let anything say that you can't do this. So I think in terms of going abroad, you can literally change your life, because especially if you're American or Canadian, and you know that there's a lot of schools looking for teachers from Canada, the US, England, UK, South Africa. And so that's an opportunity for you. If you feel like I'm struggling in your country, I'm not making enough money, and I want to teach, or I have enough skills to teach, then just come and try it. When you have money, you have options. When you have options, you can do what you want to do rather than what you have to do, and it can launch you in a whole nother direction. So that's my little change of your question and answer to my own question.
It's okay. That was a great that was a great answer. And just talk about really quickly, what is next for Lisa?
So I definitely want to come back to China. And I think that, everything happens for a reason. I think that I needed to slow down a little bit. And so being at home has done that, but also being able to do this master's. Sometimes you can learn a lot by reading on your own. And that's what I was doing, is whenever I wanted to figure something out, I would grab a book, jump on YouTube, learn how to do it. But there are definitely points when there's larger gaps in your knowledge that would just be better filled if you took time to study it in a different way. And I think that that's what doing my master's is. It's like learning this stuff from ground zero. And once I get that degree, I'm coming back to China to apply it there. And I also want to, run some workshops to teach what I learned in my master's, to give that skill to people in the community who want it. So that's what's next for me here until those borders open and this master's finish, and then back to China.
All right. Can you list off some social media? Like, how can people get in touch with you? How can they keep up with Thrive and the Beijing monologues? Where can they get the Monday Mix?
So we post the Monday Mix on both Pyro, which is a Chinese app, Pyro Music. You can just look up Thrive Beijing. We also now post it on our WeChat official account. So if you have WeChat, you can look up Thrive Beijing and you'll find us there. We post the Monday mixes and articles there. And if you're in the West, or if you're more of an Instagram person, we're also on Instagram as Thrive Beijing. All of our social media is Thrive Beijing. You can find us on Facebook. We're not as active on Facebook, but we're going to start pushing Facebook a little bit more, and also LinkedIn. So people's stories can be on LinkedIn. That can help them foster new connections. And yeah, just search us up, Thrive Beijing, Google us, and you'll find all of our accounts.
Yeah. All right. So I usually give, I guess, the last words and then we end. But I feel like you said so much inspirational things already. Do you have something else you want to say?
No, I just think that if you're hearing this wherever you are and you feel like I need a change, then make a change. I know it's not the best time to travel right now because of the coronavirus, but start thinking about, if you would like this opportunity to live in China, live in Asia, try something different, reach out to people like Eric, to people like myself, anybody that you see doing these kinds of things. The community is so great, so happy to support and help other people. Like, just have an information interview. We'll tell you how we, started, like how we got on this journey. And yeah, hopefully you can come and join us out in Asia.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on the show. But we're going to end here. Remember, guys, I'm Eric Charles. This is Lisa, and that is the Black Book Podcast. I'm just on a mission. I'm trying to